Well, I set out for myself a little challenge, and that was to take a trip by train, but how to do it? I finally settled on beginning in Louisville, of course, where I'm located, and then flying to Chicago. There's not a really good Amtrak hub in Louisville at all, or a stop for that matter. In Chicago, I would transfer from the airport, Chicago O'Hare Airport, to the Amtrak station and take a trip down to New Orleans on the city of New Orleans, and then return by way of Atlanta Airport and then back to Louisville. Here's a list of things that I brought with me that were pretty much on target. I could pack them in a mid-size backpack, and that was great for the trip, the part of the trip on the airplanes. Trains are a little bit more flexible with what they allow you. I wish I had brought some flip-flops and a pair of shorts and had swapped out the shoes I was wearing for a more comfortable pair of shoes. Other than that, I was pretty much on target with what I packed. Here's a picture of my itinerary that I gave to my family. And here I am heading off to the airport at 8 a.m. I come out of the Batcave and head on my way. And it's with some anticipation and excitement that I'm doing that. This trip was just kind of a chance to get away and do something different. Again, on the way to the airport, I finally figured out later on, not too much later on, that I could get a better picture by turning my phone 90 degrees, so you won't be annoyed by these narrow photos for long. And got the ticket for parking at Louisville Airport. Long-range parking is with everybody else in the garage, so I had a nice choice of parking spot really close to the terminal, and over long-term parking was not very expensive. I think it cost me $50 and some change to park for the 2 evenings for about the 65 hours that I was there. My car was there. There's a shot of the little plane I was riding, and here we are lifting off. I completed the first leg of my journey in an hour and 20 minutes from Louisville to Chicago. With the time change, it was actually a 20-minute trip. And got ready for the second leg of my journey, which was about an hour across town in ground transportation from Chicago O'Hare Airport to Chicago Union Station. There's only one line that goes by subway. I researched on YouTube and online other resources, and the best way to go was the $5 ticket on the CTA Blue line, the only line that will go from Chicago O'Hare to the Amtrak station. So I've dutifully followed the signs. It's well marked. It's a longer walk than the video here shows, but it was easy to follow, no problems. Ground transportation, CTA line, blue line, whatever, you could follow those fairly easily. And actually there's some good resources on YouTube of a fellow that lands at the airport and tracks through the same path that I took. So I was very appreciative of getting that up on YouTube. Let's spend a minute recapping my journey here. It's not too much, but There was a lot of twisting and turning, but very easy to follow. Ground transportation and toilets, those are my two priorities at the moment. I'm not sure these videos and photographs are necessarily in the correct order, but you get the flavor of things. So I arrived at the CTA station, Chicago Transit Authority station, and well marked again, easy to follow. And I arrived at the ticketing booth, put in my card, paid the $5, and got my ticket. Easy. Go down to the Blue Line trains. Again, they're the only trains that were operating. I went to my train. It was the one on the left, and I got on that and checked the schedule that was on the board. I had to get to Clinton Station, which is about 2/3 of the way down the list, and that looked good. Found my seat. A little more crowded than I was anticipating, but it all worked. And then I sat, and I waited. Soon some announcements came over the intercom on the train saying that all the trains were standing, which meant they were all stopped at each station heading out of the airport, and there was only one line. Apparently construction was taking place all summer on the Blue Line. So I got off the train, went to the hotel that was located in the airport terminal, contacted the bell captain and asked if he would see if he could arrange a taxi for me. I gave him a little tip. I also organized some other passengers. So we carpooled or taxi pooled to the Amtrak station. I don't have any video of that, and that's because I was simply so focused on getting the transportation to the Amtrak station. I had allowed some time for mishaps, especially on the ground, and that certainly was what happened here. It ended up being about an hour and a half from landing to getting to the Amtrak station. I did get a little scared. The taxi driver, when he arrived, I said, "Is this Union Station?" And he said, "Yes." "You didn't mean the one on Michigan Avenue?" And of course I didn't know what that was, but I got there safely. The first third of my journey was over. I had made it from Louisville to Chicago Airport, and then from the airport to the Amtrak station, the Union Terminal. That was quite an adventure, but it was accomplished, and I arrived at the Amtrak station. Beautiful building, historic. Here you see the main waiting area. A very impressive area, and large. Down this hallway you get to the trains, but there's also a food court, and then first class or passengers with rooms can stay in the Metropolitan Lounge, and I got to do that because I had a roomette. And here's the first floor, and then here's the second floor of the Metropolitan Lounge. They provided snacks, Cokes, coffee, and chips, but nothing substantial. Eventually, after about a 6-hour wait, they walked us to the train, and that was exciting and interesting, right along the tracks there. And here's the engine that we will pass. I ended up being on the last car, which is interesting for the Chicago Union Station, because trains back out of Union Station, at least the passenger trains do. So I was the lead car getting out of the station, and then it goes to an area where it turns around, the train does, and I became the last car, or a passenger on the last car. A long train, at least it was from my perspective, and we walked and we walked and we walked, and you can see I'm the last person walking to the end of the train. And this was the side of the train that my roomette was on. And got to it, walked up the steps, and finally reached my room. A couple of bends there. And there's my little roomette. So I was aboard the train and ready for the third leg, I guess that's how I'm counting it, the third leg of my journey, which would be the city of New Orleans, from Chicago to New Orleans. I got settled in my roomette. I was fortunate to be able to upgrade to a roomette. I originally purchased a coach ticket for $110. They offered me to upgrade and to bid on an upgrade. I bid $115. And got the upgrade. That was about 50% or so of what a roomette would have cost. And we began heading outward. You'll notice I'm on the right-hand side and we're traveling backwards. I'm actually facing the front of the train, but I'm the first car, or the last car of the train. So we're backing out. I switched around so I could see where we were going, and out we go in the train area to get turned around. It was a little bit after 8 o'clock when we boarded and got going, and you can see here that it's starting to get dark. There wasn't much viewing past just south of Chicago, really all the way to Memphis, Tennessee, so there's not much in the way of shots and views to show you. It was a relaxing trip, but nothing really exciting to see. The longest part of my journey in terms of distance and time was my trip by rail from Chicago to New Orleans on the city of New Orleans. There wasn't a lot of opportunity for sightseeing, very limited. From Chicago roughly to Memphis, over half of the trip, that was in darkness. And the rest of the way from Memphis to New Orleans, except for some stops at cities, was in what I call the green tunnel. That is a lot of trees and foliage that were just surrounding the railway, and really didn't provide any opportunity to see much land. So there wasn't a lot of sightseeing out the window. The trip was relaxing. The staff was very helpful, and I just want to talk a little bit about what was on the train. I was able to upgrade to a roomette, and that was very nice. The roomette was perfect for one person. It could be good for two people. I show you here, I slept on the top bunk, so I rigged the roomette for sleeping on the top bunk, and that was very comfortable. All of the roomettes had access to the shower and bathroom on the roomette car, and that was a very good situation. I advised getting some flip-flops, and I had to ask for a towel, but other than that, it was great. Here's a picture of the passageway in the roomette car. It's tight, but functional. There were coffee stations in each car, and that was nice. It didn't take me too long to figure out how to get from car to car, and it was fun to explore the train. The doors shut automatically, by the way. The train had a couple of dining cars, and these were good for both eating and sitting up and getting a change of venue from the roomette. I thought I'd give you a look at the meals I had. This was actually a meal I had at Union Station, and this was the only one that cost me anything, about $25. And then I had a late dinner on the train leaving Chicago at about 8:30. Here's my breakfast that I had. You can tell all of these menus are not haute cuisine, but they're edible and filling and good. Here's my salmon that I had for lunch on the train. They're all included in the price of the roomette. There is a cafe car that is available for purchasing food. This is the observation car, and I sat here a couple of times, did my Bible devotions in the morning. And then I took a look at the coach seating car. Very comfortable seats. I'm not sure I'd want to stay overnight, and here it is rigged for night sleeping. There were opportunities to get off the train, and I took advantage of those on several occasions. It was good to just get out and stretch my legs. I arrived at mid-afternoon on August 2nd at the New Orleans Union Station. It was a very different situation than the Chicago terminal. Here's a view from my window at the station, and it was a long walk outdoors, but a long walk to the terminal or to the main building. Much smaller situation, nice and clean, as was Chicago, but a little bit more modern, if the 1950s style is more modern. I had planned on walking to my hotel, which was about a mile away, so I left the Union Station and headed toward the Holiday Inn downtown Superdome. Just like in Chicago, the New Orleans station is located in what I would call a business district, a lot of offices, but no real sightseeing opportunities at either place. I checked into my hotel room and found it to be very comfortable. I was well rested, but took opportunity to have a long shower and just relax a little bit, do some reading, eating at a local restaurant, and in general just having some downtime in my hotel room that late afternoon and through the evening. In the morning I awakened early, had a breakfast at about 6:30 a.m. and then decided to go on a little sightseeing. I discovered that I was a mile away from Jackson Square, which is the center point of the French Quarter. So I walked through the French Quarter, enjoyed seeing the sights, took a few photos, and headed to Jackson Square. I was very careful not to get anybody in my photos. A lot of homeless people on the streets that early in the morning, about 8 a.m. I was intrigued at some of the places that I could have gone to had it been a little bit later in the day. The Museum of Death. There was also the New Orleans Pharmacy Museum. On a more uplifting note, St. Louis Cathedral is located right at the entrance of Jackson Square. I would have enjoyed touring that church. In the meantime, though, I entered Jackson Square and took my time looking around there. I realized it was getting pretty hot, so I headed back. It was 8:30 in the morning and the heat index was 106. On my way back, I stopped by the front of the Marriott Hotel on Canal Street. I had stayed here in New Orleans, my last trip to New Orleans, and only trip prior to this one, about 40 years ago in July or August. I was pulling some Marine duty at the time. I got back to the hotel, showered, changed my clothes, and checked out at 11 a.m. It was time to leave New Orleans. I had a flight to Atlanta that connected with a flight to Louisville. The layover in Atlanta was only going to be an hour and 15 minutes, so I felt some pressure in making that connection for the second flight. As it happened, there was some difficulty. There was a large storm front that went through Atlanta and delayed flights coming in and going out. My arrival time from New Orleans to Atlanta was pushed back, which created a difficulty in making the connection. In retrospect, I should have stayed another night in New Orleans. I would have been able to sightsee more and avoid the delays in Atlanta. But that's a lesson learned. I made my way to the New Orleans airport, and I was surprised at how small the airport was. Really nice and modern, very clean. I really liked the New Orleans airport. It was clean and modern, very small, or smaller than I expected. The only thing that was overwhelming, in my view, was the security checkpoint that allowed you to go from the main terminal into the gates. And I had to allow some time to get to my gate, but I had plenty of time to wait. The problem I had was what to do with my long wait for my flight. I stumbled on the military lounge there at the New Orleans airport. This was a very nice situation for active and retired military. It was a very friendly and quiet place. The staff was great. They had snacks and also some light lunch items if you wished. You could eat, read, watch TV, even take a nap. They had a place for you to store your luggage if you wanted to wander the airport a little bit. I could secure my backpack and wander the airport, and I did. And I found this. The departure time for my flight out of New Orleans to Atlanta kept being pushed back, and finally it was at the point where I would have missed my connection. So I anxiously watched the monitor that was in the airplane and kept tabs on things, anticipating having to spend the night in the Atlanta airport and getting the next flight out in the morning. As we began to descend into Atlanta, I got information that my connecting flight was delayed, so I was very hopeful that I would make my connection. My connecting flight was in the same concourse at the Atlanta airport, but the gate was about a quarter-mile away. I was very happy to discover that my connecting flight had yet to leave. I was one of the last people on the aircraft. We arrived safely in Louisville. I put my backpack on and eventually got to my car. I paid the $50.88 parking fee for long term. The rest of the trip was very uneventful. I finally arrived and pulled into the Batcave. Mission accomplished.